Today on the Tearsheet podcast.
So I was actually speaking with Cabbage co-founder Catherine Petralia maybe a month ago. We were talking about the PPP loan program, and she mentioned that they're just overwhelmed by calls and stuff, and they really needed to rely on some of their automated things to manage that. And then I began to see this as a trend. I think we talked about it. You know, you would go to any financial institution, a fintech or a more traditional bank, and they almost all had a note on their homepage saying, you know, we are experiencing longer than usual wait times on the phone.
Welcome to the Tearsheet Deep Dive podcast. This is where we go a little bit deeper into some of our best stories over the past couple of weeks. Today we have our reporter Sara Toth Stub joining us to talk about AI and chatbots. Exciting. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Zack. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for making time today. What prompted this story about chatbots and conversational interfaces, and why now?
So I was actually speaking with Cabbage co-founder Catherine Petralia maybe a month ago. We were talking about the PPP loan program, and she mentioned that they're just overwhelmed by calls and stuff, and they really needed to rely on some of their automated things to manage that. And then I began to see this as a trend. I think we talked about it. You know, you would go to any financial institution, a fintech or a more traditional bank, and they almost all had a note on their homepage saying, you know, we are experiencing longer than usual wait times on the phone. And I think, you know, it's related to the coronavirus pandemic, with a lot of people just with things being so uncertain now may have extra questions about their finances. And then I think that's exacerbated by the PPP loan programs and other sorts of loans and aid out there that people are relying on banks, fintechs, other financial institutions to go through those institutions in order to get access to those government funds that are available. So this can often be a confusing process, especially for small business owners that may not have been through anything like this before. So I think mainly because of the coronavirus pandemic and the extra concerns and need for loans and need for financial advice that's bringing up now.
We had the CEO of Pindrop on the podcast yesterday, and they're a voice authentication company. They work in bank call centers, and he said that some of his clients were seeing 1,000 during the peak of the coronavirus, as well as the PPP influx, like 1,000% jump in call volume. And it was so great that like fraudsters actually were abandoning trying to wait on hold because the wait times were too long, which I thought was a very funny analogy.
Funny. Yeah. But people I talked to said the same thing, just huge, unimaginable jumps in call volumes and inquiry volumes.
So what did you find when you looked into, I guess, the types of technologies and tools that banks and other fintech companies were using to deal with this increase of inbound traffic, really?
Okay, so what I found is regarding phone calls, yes, most, if not all, rely on some sort of routing system. Usually a person doesn't pick up right away. You need to go through something in order to clarify what your questions are, what your needs are, and then hopefully get that answered either by a person or through in chatbot or other automated system. In most banks have this, and those that did not were scurrying to update their systems once it became clear that this pandemic was not going away, and that for the foreseeable future they were likely to be busier than usual. So I spoke with a company called Casisto, which helps design their platform is called Kai. They help design customer service solutions driven by artificial intelligence and voice recognition, things like this. And they were just also inundated with requests to set up systems for banks who didn't have something, or it wasn't serving their needs the way they needed. Because in addition to being inundated with calls, another thing that happened was that a lot of places needed to shut down their call centers or have them working at limited capacity, because this isn't necessarily something that could be done from home because of the extra security that they need. You can't necessarily have people sitting at home and answering calls for a bank or financial institution
Mm-hmm.
call center. So, due to many places being in lockdown and due sometimes to workers actually getting sick with the virus itself, a lot of these call centers were closed or working at limited capacity. So that also exacerbated the situation. As the CEO of Casisto told me, this is no longer just a fun optional thing to have. The pandemic has made this, seem very necessary for banks and for financial institutions.
What a double whammy, huh? Of increased
Yeah,
call volume, and they had to transition all their call center staff to work from home.
right,
What a challenge.
right.
So
Yeah.
as you started talking to these companies, did you find it surprising what they were responding to you in terms of how effective some of their tools were?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the main things that came across as a very valuable use of these tools is for routing, meaning for someone that is calling to express what they need and then get to the right person or get the answer to what they're asking. So that was sort of that's a big use that a lot of institutions were saying that they did. But something that I found interesting, again, this is something that Casisto CEO told me, that in addition to these systems helping customers, the systems also, because they can, they remember and they analyze the questions that they are getting from people. So because of this, you can take all this data and you can look for trends and you can see what people are asking about. So the CEO of Casisto was telling me that this was also really interesting. And actually, by looking at this data, he was saying they were able to serve people better because they were seeing which were the most popular questions or which were the new questions. He said that at some point, a lot of people started calling and they wanted to know how often ATM machines were cleaned or sanitized. And, that's something that banks, never would have been asked that so often in the past, and wouldn't, in this way they could analyze that question was coming up a lot, and banks could quickly see that was, maybe an answer that they needed to have ready for people. So this gathering information like that would have taken a lot longer if you were waiting for all the call center employees or bank employees to come to their manager and say, a lot of people are asking me about X, Y, and Z. This way they can get those, they can see those trends and then respond to them so that chatbots and other assistants can give relevant answers to these new questions.
So I just remember a couple of years ago, I mean, there were, chatbots were all the rage. All the banks were either licensing in some of this technology or they were building their own. Artificial intelligence sort of stood out as a way to, as the future of customer service. It doesn't sound like we've reached that yet from what you're saying, especially if like most of the, feedback loop is either routing a user to a call center rep or to answer a basic question. Am I hearing that correctly? Is artificial intelligence, was it overhyped?
So I don't know that. Yes, some people would probably say that it was overhyped. Although in fairness, it is something that is developing all the time. I spoke with Daniel Fagella, who's the CEO of Emerge Artificial Intelligence Research, which is a research and consulting company. And he was saying that we're not at a point where you can usually have a real in-depth conversation right now, beyond asking what your balance is or something like this. So no, we're not there yet, but even he said that the number of staff needed to answer calls is dropping, and there are less staff needed to route calls and figure out what people need. So more calls are going, directly to the experts. So it's cut out some of the wait time and some of that, but there's still a long way to go. It's just, the development of human language processing that computers can do. So there is a way to go. And then it's also interesting to point out that a lot of these, virtual assistants are present on apps. And so a lot of what they're doing to some extent, the way that banks are using AI with virtual assistants is they're allowing people to do what they could have maybe always done sitting at their laptop or typing on their phone, but it allows them to be hands-free, and it allows them maybe to get questions answered more quickly. Like they can just talk to the assistant and say, how many times did I go to the grocery store this month, rather than having to open up their account and count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how many times their credit card was used at the grocery store. So some of it isn't necessarily that they're getting new information, but they're getting information that they could have gotten anyway from the website of the bank or the app, but they're just getting it more quickly and in a more personal seeming way. So I also thought that was interesting.
Got it. And I guess, a great way to kind of to culminate this relationship, this conversation is, like, did you get a feel for how far away we are from chatbots or conversational interfaces really making a difference? And I guess a corollary to that would be like, what would need to happen, I guess, to get to that point?
Okay, so one of the things that needs to happen is actually, more interaction and training, as you would say, from humans, like putting together data teams, data scientists with, customer service professionals, and having them work together and work with the programs, work with the AI, work with the software to develop more practical solutions. These things shouldn't just be developed by data scientists. They also need the input of customer service professionals who know what people are often asking and the style in which they're asking it. So when I was speaking with Daniel Fadella at Emerge, he was saying that, in 5 years, there'll be, even less wait times than now, but it's still not going to be there. And he also said that at the end of the day, high value clients are probably always going to be routed to a person because, nothing can completely replace that human touch. But they're just it is going to happen less and less and less often, but it's never going to be totally replaced. And it probably will be something that is more of a luxury, or maybe more reserved for exclusive customers once the systems can reasonably serve, more run-of-the-mill clients and inquiries.
Sara, thanks for joining us on the Tearsheet podcast today.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.